Hello and welcome to this final third look, first look. Welcome to this first look exploring session, the third of the first look exploring sessions, looking at the Insatiate Countess. We have done two previous sessions, just to clarify definitely what's going on here. Looking at this for the first time, we're having a rough read through of the text as it stands, just trying to get our feet on the ground as to what's going on in this text, starting to ask questions and get a sense of how it all flows. And hopefully we'll come back to it in the future for what would then be a second look and then maybe a third look, even if third looks, we don't even know if that's a mythical thing in our future. We don't even know if that's a thing that's ever going to happen. Who knows? To help answer the question of how this play ends, we have assembled this wonderful room of people. Reading Isabella, Friar, and Rogero is...
Hello, my name is Valentina. I am an Italian actor and voiceover artist in London.
Reading Gniaca, Captain, and Watch is...
Hi, Briony Sparrow, actor in Lincolnshire.
Reading Sago and Duke is...
Hi, I'm Arrogant. I'm neither a sage nor a duke, but hey, I'll pretend.
Reading Abigail and Roberto today is...
I am Lois, a retired academic living in London.
Reading Lieutenant Medina and Mizaldus today is...
Hi, Helen Scott, based in Suffolk.
Reading Lady Lentulus, Claradiana, and a messenger is...
Hello, I'm Helen Good, I'm a historian, and I'm in Hull.
Reading Thais and Cardinal today is...
Rachael Nicole, actor on the East Coast.
And reading Anna, Soldier, and Executioner today is...
Hello, I'm Lynn, and I'm on the West Coast of this the other side of the herring pond, just so y'all know.
And I'm your host, Robert Crighton. I will be reading stage directions and stepping in if there's anything gone horribly, horribly wrong, which with this text, considering that we have made some editorial adjustments which are not wholly consistent, may occur, we shall see. It's an exciting magical mystery tour. We're going from Act 4, Scene 2 today. The two plot lines have been hotting up, as it were. Isabella has once again swapped partners and taken up Gniaca. Meanwhile, in the B plot, our two feuding chaps, Mizaldus and Claradiana, have joyfully talked themselves into and to a degree out of getting hanged, though their position is complicated by the fact that the Duke knows that there isn't really a case to answer for, and that they're basically going to be fine. Meanwhile, another case, which is based on a false premise, in theory has someone due to be killed. So slightly darker things as well as comedy things going on, and all sorts of problematic things that occasionally pops up. We should just briefly mention we have occasional random bits of anti-Semitism which we still haven't really got around to unpacking, and of course the ongoing question of misogyny in the whole nature of the Insatiate Countess, full stop. So with all those warnings in place, enter Isabella alone, Gniaca following her.
Oh, heavens, that I was born to be hate's slave, the food of rumour that devours my fame. I am called Insatiate Countess, lust's paramour, a glorious devil and the noble whore. I am sick, vexed, and tormented. Oh, revenge!
On whom would my Isabella be revenged?
Upon a viper that does eat mine honour. I will not name him till I be revenged. See, here's the libels are divulged against me, and everlasting scandal to my name, and thus the villain writes in my disgrace. Who loves Isabella the insatiate, needs Atlas back to content her lust, that wandering strumpet and chaste wedlock's hate, that renders truth deceit for loyal trust, that sacrilegious thieves of Hymen's right, making at last her god, heaven her delight. Swell not, proud heart, I'll quench thy grieving blood, desire in woman cannot be withstood.
I'll be thy champion sweet gainst the world, name but the villain that defames thee thus.
There thy hand execute whom my tongue condemns, then art thou truly valiant, mine for ever, but if thou faintest, hate must our true lover sever.
By my dead father's soul, my mother's virtues, and by my knighthood and gentility, I'll be revenged on all the authors of your obloquy. Name him.
Rogero.
Ha!
What? Does his name affright thee, coward lord? Be mad, Isabella, curse on thy revenge. This lord was knighted for his father's worth, not for his own. Farewell, thou perjured man. I'll leave you all. You all conspire to work mine honour's fall.
Stay, my Isabella. Were he my father's son, composed of me, he dies. Delight still keep with thee. Go in.
Thou art just... Revenge to me is sweeter now than lust.
And exit Isabella here. Enter Rogero. He and Gniaca see one another, and they draw their swords, we can infer, and make a pass. Then enter Anna.
What mean you nobles? Will you kill each other?
Hold.
Hold.
Thou shame to friendship, what intends thy hate?
Love arms my hand, makes my soul valiant. Isabella's wrongs now sit upon my sword, to fall more heavy to thy coward's head than thunderbolts upon Jove's rifted oaks. Deny thy scandal or defend thy life.
What? Hath thy fate and reason left thee both? That thou art only flesh without a soul, hast thou no feeling of thyself and me? Blind rage that will not let thee see thyself.
I come not to dispute, but execute, and thus comes death.
And there's another pass.
And thus I break thy dart. Here's at thy horse face.
'Tis missed, here's at thy heart. Stay, let us breathe.
Let reason govern rage yet, let us leave. Although most wrong be mine, I can forgive, and in this attent thy shame will ever live.
Thou hast wronged the phoenix of all women rarest, she that's most wise, most loving, chaste, and fairest.
Thou dotest upon a devil, not a woman, that has bewitched thee with her sorcery and drowned thy soul in lathy faculties. Her quenchless lust has quite benumbed thy knowledge, thy intellectual powers oblivion's mothers, that thou art nothing but forgetfulness.
What's this to my Isabella? My sins mine own, her faults were none until thou madest them known.
Leave her, and leave thy shame where first thou foundst it, else live a bondslave and to diseased lust, devoured in a gulf-like appetite, and infamy shall write thy epitaph. Thy memory leave nothing but thy crimes, a scandal to thy name in future times.
Put up your weapon, I dare hear you further. Insatiate lust is sire still to murder.
Believe it, friend, if her heart blood were vexed, though you kill me, new pleasures makes you next. She loved me dearer than she loves you now. She'll ne'er be faithful, has twice broke her vow. This curse pursues female adultery. They'll swim through blood for sin's variety. Their pleasures like a sea, groundless and wide. A woman's lust was never satisfied.
Fear whispers in my breast. I have a soul that blushes red for tendering bloody facts. Forgive me, friend. If I can be forgiven, thy counsel is the path leads me to heaven.
I do embrace thy reconciled love.
That death or danger now shall ne'er remove. Go tell thy insatiate Countess, Anna, we have escaped the snares of her false love, vowing forever to abandon her.
You have heard our resolution. Pray be gone.
My office ever rested at your pleasure. I was the Indian, yet you had the treasure. My faction often sweats and oft takes cold. Then gild true diligence o'er with gold.
Thy speech deserves it. There's gold.
And Anna gets her tip, gives her gold.
Be honest now, and not love's nuddy, turned up and played on whilst thou keep'st the stock. Prithee, formally, let's hide thy absence.
Lords, farewell.
Exit Anna.
'Tis horse and ponders that makes hearth like hell.
Now I am got out of lust's labyrinth. I will to Venice for a certain time, to recreate my much abused spirits, and then revisit Pavy and my friend.
I'll bring you on your way, but must return. Love is like Etna, and will ever burn. Yet now desire is quenched, flamed once in height, till man knows hell, he never has firm faith.
And they exit. It was a last-minute change around in casting there that made that rather fun. Isabella exits, and immediately the person who's been trashing her behind her back comes in as the same person. But yeah, it's really interesting and as a sort of modern parallel here of what Isabella's dealing with at the beginning, which is just this immediate trashing of her reputation. And what's going on there, and then what happens as Rogero and Gniaca get up to, because they have this exciting sword fight, at least 2 passes, and then that whole dimension takes a different direction, which is thoughts in the room, Briony.
I like how that little fight was written, and I don't know about anybody else, but it kind of felt to me like Gniaca was not doing as well in the fight, because all of his lines were much shorter than Rogero's, and he's the one that suggests that they have a little breather quite near the start of it. So I just felt like he was a bit out of his depth there, which might be one of the reasons why he was persuaded to agree with what Rogero was saying.
Other thoughts, Alan?
Given that Isabel seemed to have spent much of the play so far chasing against anything in trousers, for her to complain that she's being liable does seem a tad rich.
Other thoughts in the room? Anyone want to follow up on that, or have other things? Eric has mentioned in the chat the scenario that we've been talking about here. The attitude of the men here, ganging together here, is it's a trope we see today. There's this really interesting element of this text where it's going, this is depressingly familiar. But then also, how does that land, and how do we play with that today? Eric?
Almost expects them to sort of, chest bump and then fist bump kind of thing. Almost at the end of that, sort of, yeah, let's totally agree that we're both not going to do this again.
And within this, you've got Anna standing there again, waiting for the tip. There's a really pointedness to these exchanges that Anna has with anyone who's of rank, and it's just an interesting, tonal shift in the middle of scenes that are going through a number of tonal shifts. Okay, let's get a little more evidence and see where this is going. Once again, Valentina will change hats and return to being Isabella. Act 4, Scene 3 isn't always split into different scenes. This could be considered the same unit of action. But enter Isabella, raving, and Anna.
Out, screech owl, messenger of my revengeous death. Thou dost belie Gniaca, 'tis not so.
Upon mine honesty, they are united.
Thy honesty? Thou vassal of my pleasure, take that.
And strikes her.
Darest thou control me when I say no? Art not my footstool? Did not I create thee and made thee gentle, being born a beggar? Thou hast been my woman spender for a crown, and thou dost stand upon thy honesty.
I am what you please, madam, yet 'tis so.
Slave, I will slit thy tongue, lest thou say no.
No, madam.
I have my humour, though thy no be false. Faint-hearted coward, get thee from my sight. When, villain? Haste, and come not near me.
Madam, I run. Her sight like death does fear me.
And exit Anna.
Perfidious cowards, stain of nobility, Venetians and be reconciled with words. Oh, that I had Gniaca once more here, within this prison made of flesh and bone, had not trust thunder with my fell revenge, but mine own hands should do the dire exploit, and fame should chronicle a woman's acts. My rage respects the persons, not the facts. Their place and worth has power to defame me. Mean hate is stingless, and does only name me. I not regard it. 'Tis high blood that swells. Give me revenge and damn me into hells.
Enter Don Sago, a colonel with a band of soldiers and a lieutenant.
A gallant Spaniard, I will hear him speak. Grief must be speechless ere the heart can break.
Lieutenant, let good discipline be used in courting of our troops within the city, not separated into many streets. That shows weak love, but not sound policy. The division in small numbers makes all weak. Forces united are the nerves of war, mother and nurse of observation. Whose rare, ingenious sprite fills all the world, by looking on itself with piercing eyes, will look through strangers' imbecilities. Therefore, be careful.
All shall be ordered fitting your command. For these three gifts which make a soldier rare is love and duty with a valiant care.
And exeunt the lieutenant and soldiers, and I'm moving a stage direction. At this moment, Sago sees Isabella.
What rarity of woman feeds my sight and leads my senses in a maze of wonder. Bellona, thou wert my mistress till I saw that shape, but now my sword I'll consecrate to her. Leave Mars and become Cupid's martialist. Beauty can turn the rugged face of war, make him smile upon delightful peace, courting her smoothly like a femalist. I grow a slave unto my potent love, whose power change hearts, make our fate remove.
Revenge, not pleasure, now o'errules my blood. Rage shall drown faint love in crimson flood, and where he caught, I'd make him murder's hand.
Methinks 'twere joy to die at her command. I'll speak to hear her speech, whose powerful breath is able to infuse life into death.
He comes to speak, he's mine. By love, he's mine.
Lady, think bold intrusion courtesy. 'Tis but imagination alters them, then 'tis your thoughts, not I that do offend.
Sir, your intrusion yet's but courtesy, unless your future humour alter it.
Why then, divinest woman, know my soul is dedicated to thy shrine of beauty, to pray for mercy and reopen the wrongs done against love and female purity. Thou abstract, drawn from nature's empty storehouse, I am thy slave. Command my sword, my heart. The soul is tried best by the body's smart.
You are a stranger to this land and me. What madness is it for me to trust you then? To cozen women is a trade amongst men. Smooth promises, faint passions, with a lie, deceives our sex of fame and chastity. What danger does your hazard for my love?
Perils that ever mortal durst approve. I'll double all the works of Hercules, expose myself in combat against an host, meet danger in place of certain death, yet never shrink or give way to my fate. Bare-breasted meet the murderous Tartar's dart, or any fatal engine made for death. Such power has love and beauty from your eye. He that dies resolute does never die. 'Tis fear gives death his strength, which I resisted. Death is but empty air the fates have twisted.
Dare you revenge my quarrel against a foe?
Then ask me if I dare embrace you thus, or kiss your hand, or gaze on your bright eye, where Cupid dances on those globes of love. Fear is my vassal. When I frown, he flies. 100 times in a life, a coward dies.
I not suspect your valour, but your will.
To gain your love, my father's blood I'll spill.
Many a sworn like that, yet broke their vow.
My whole endeavour to your wish shall bow. I am your plague to scourge your enemies.
Perform your promise and enjoy your pleasure. Spend my love's dowry, that is women's treasure. But if thy resolution dread the trial, I'll tell the world a Spaniard was disloyal.
Relate your grief. I long to hear their names, whose bastard spirits thy true worth defames. I'll wash thy scandal off when their hearts bleeds. Valor makes difference betwixt words and deeds. Tell thy fame's poison, blood shall wash thee white.
My spotless honour is a slave to spite. These are the monsters Venice doth bring forth, whose empty souls are bankrupt of true worth. False Count Guido, treacherous Gniaca, Countess of Gaza, and of rich Rogero. Then, if thou beest a knight, help the oppressed. Through danger safety comes, through trouble rest. And so, my love,
Ignoble villains, their best blood shall prove revenge falls heavy that is raised by love.
Think what reproach is to a woman's name, honoured by birth, by marriage, and by beauty. Be God on earth, and revenge innocence. Oh, worthy Spaniard, on my knees I beg, forget the persons, think on their offence.
By the white soul of honor, by heaven's Jove, they die if their death can attain your love.
Thus will I clip thy waist, embrace thee thus dully with thy hair, and kiss thee thus. Our pleasures, Protean-like in sundry shapes, shall with variety stir dalliance.
I am immortal, O divinest creature. Thou dost excel the gods in wit and feature. False counts, you die. Revenge now shakes his rods. Beauty condemns you, stronger than the gods.
Come, Mars of lovers, Vulcan is not here. Make vengeance like my bed, quite void of fear.
My senses are entranced. In this slumber I taste heaven's joys, but cannot count the number.
And they exit. So we have another wooing scene, as it were, though this is a much more cynical one. We open with this moment of violence against Anna. There is this class thing being thrown in Anna's face, and blame and all sorts of things happening there. And then in this scene, Isabella is very mercenary here. It's revenge, not pleasure, is what this is all about. This time it's Sago. He's the one who goes, basically just turns up, looks at Isabella, and we hear the ooh moment. There's something about this where it's the way I'm navigating this in my head is that this is made up of a series of games that are going on, where you say, okay, and in this scene, and now you're going to fall randomly in love with her, and let's just play the scene now. And it just feels like that just keeps happening, is that, this is a little drama scene we're going to play with. And let's see what variation on a theme we can have. It's a really interesting sequence. But thoughts in the room, Lynn?
Yeah, I mean, I realize the way that we the format, the exploring session format, where we divide the play up into several parts, tends to maybe create a sense of episodicness that's not necessarily there when you read something straight through. But I really do feel like we're in a different play than we were yesterday and the day before. And Isabella seems like a different person. I mean, she certainly had some impulse control issues before, but I mean, it's one thing to not be able to control your erotic impulses, but it's another thing to deliberately plot the death of people. It just really feels like there's been I feel like the ground is shifting under our feet here.
Briony, and then Rachael.
That's why you shouldn't slut shame, I guess. She's not reacted very well to it. I don't know. I think it's a fair progression for her. I don't know.
Yeah. Is this the slippery slope that one goes down in a well, I mean, it's pre-social media, but it feels like the sort of social media rage has come down. Rachael, then Eric.
Just the partner that she's chosen. I mean, that is a soldier too. I mean, well, she's not really in love with him, but that he's a soldier. And this is when she sees this soldier that she wants to go to revenge. That she, she's been comparing herself a lot to Aphrodite, and now it seems she's comparing herself a little bit to Mars instead. And what Briony said about the slut shamingness, because her dating, the 3 or 4 guys, given that she's married to some other guy that we haven't seen, but if she wasn't married, this wouldn't be that outrageous, I think, by our standards today.
Eric, and then Valentina.
I was gonna say, having played the sucker / lover boy for the past 3 days,
entirely accidentally, it is a random process.
That's what he says. It just, I don't know, it's interesting to see this evolution because it feels like sort of this play is taking all the sort of like lover boys from other plays and basically sacrificing them on the altar of Isabella's rage / changefulness. I don't know what the noun would be, but yeah, sort of, she gets tired of him very, very quickly. Yeah, no, it's an interesting one, and also because you get all these lovely, actually lovely speeches that are pretty much over the top, but they're actually lovely in terms of the way they're written.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's an interesting thing. If we didn't know the context of what's happening in this scene between these two people, the scene in isolation functions in a very interesting way. It's just in connection with the rest of the play. We're sort of going, hang on. Valentina.
I mean, I understand, yes, that she's definitely going on a journey. But, I could see the manipulation was there yesterday as well. So I don't find such a so big a leap, because she was already manipulating the other two anyway. It's just the stakes get higher, so that her manipulation gets higher, and the amount of sex hints that she drops in the last bit of that scene is just ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean you've got
sex as an arm, sex as a weapon, manipulation.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, I stepped on you there slightly, but the way the dialogue is acting as actually stage directions as well. In that, we know exactly what Isabella is doing with Sago towards the end of that scene, because it's being described and set up in ways that are very explicit. Other thoughts, Lois, and then Lynn again.
Oh, I find some of the writing through here really clunky. I mean, when you talk about things having changed, I think that's one of the other things that has changed. The quality of the writing in the earlier part was much better, but I won't go into possible reasons for that. I mean, the other thing I noticed, of course, was that when the men are talking, I think it's Rogero who goes on about women and how when they're lustful, they're really awful, and they go from one person to another. And naturally, I mean, every woman reading this thinks, yeah, and what about men who are always doing this anyway? And, adultery is hardly confined to women. But on the other hand, Isabella is really, it becomes unbelievable, it seems to me. I mean, it's just everything awful you can ever think of about women is nicely rolled into one here.
Lynn, then Helen.
I was just going to say that speaking of the is she Mars or is she Venus, and what Valentina was saying about the warfare imagery, the equivalence of love and war is a very common sort of metaphorical model that in this period. If you think about the arbor scene with Horatio and Belle Imperia in Spanish tragedy, where they're speaking in these war and combat metaphors, but the play is actually erotic. It happens all the time in this period. War as a metaphor for love. It's actually quite conventional, just so you know.
Helen, and then briefly Rachael, then we'll move on.
I had a great deal of difficulty in believing Sago. Can that be how you pronounce it? Maybe. Because this sudden falling so massively in love, without hearing her say a word, without knowing anything of her character, if it was Lily, you would have Cupid darting him, and then it would all be believable.
Well, I mean, the thing is, but it is mirroring what happened with the Countess earlier. The Countess basically sees people and just immediately seems to fall in love. And it seems that this chap is doing exactly the same thing. The play doesn't seem to be particularly interested in why people have these sudden passions. It's just interested in what happens after it occurs. So it's an interesting question in performance whether the believability matters. I mean, I've been putting in comedy sound effects just to lighten the tone. There's part of me is sort of thinking there's almost that seems applicable, that you need the bell ringing the changes at the side of the stage. That actually is not wholly silly. Rachael.
I wonder if somebody totally correct me, because I'm not, I really still don't know anything about this era, but the idea of, I guess, a woman who goes after what she wants romantically or sexually, as opposed to being acted upon and being wooed or whatever, I think maybe we have women who are more stating their wants, and I don't know. I think what Lynn was saying with the Mars and the Aphrodite, maybe that's a sort of shift from being wooed to actively pursuing also, even though I think she's been pursuing actively a lot. I don't know. Maybe it's saying something about women and, the gender roles, and, because Abigail and Thias, going after their husbands and making sure to thwart their plots too and keep their things that they want.
Okay, talking of Abigail and Thias, we will go into Act 4, Scene 4. In fact, we'll run a couple of short scenes into each other to complete the act, to get a sense of the idea of perhaps how flow may work. So, enter Lady Lentulus, Abigail, and Thias.
Well, madam, you see the destiny that follows marriage. Our husbands are quiet now and must suffer the law.
If my husband had been worth the begging, some courtier would have had him. He might be begged well enough, for he knows not his own wife from another.
Oh, you're a couple of trusty wenches, to deceive your husbands thus.
If we had not deceived them thus, we had been trust wenches.
Our husbands will be hanged because they think themselves cuckolds.
If all true cuckolds were of that mind, the hangman would be the richest occupation, and more wealthy widows than there be younger brothers to marry them.
The merchant venturers would be a very small company.
'Tis 12 to 1 of that. However the rest escape, I shall fear a massacre.
If my husband hereafter, for his wealth, chance to be dubbed, I'll have him called the Knight of the Supposed Horn.
Faith, and it sounds well.
Oh, come, madcaps, leave jesting, and let us deliver them out of their earthly purgation. You are the spirits that torment them. But my love and Lord kind Mendoza will lose his life to preserve mine honour, not for hate to others.
By my troth, if I had been his judge, I should have hanged him for having no more wit. I speak as I think, for I would not be hanged for ne'er a man under the heavens.
Faith, I think I should for my husband. I do not hold the opinion of the philosopher that writes, we love them best that we enjoy first. For I protest I love my husband better than any that did know me before.
Oh, so do I. Yet life and pleasure are two sweet things to a woman.
He that's willing to die to save mine honour, I'll die to save his.
Believe it who that list. We love a lively man, I grant you, but to maintain that life, I'll ne'er consent to die. This is a rule I still will keep in breast. Love well thy husband, wench, but thyself best.
I have followed your counsel hitherto, and mean to do still.
Come, we neglect our business, 'tis no jesting. Tomorrow they are executed, lest we reprieve them. We be their destinies to cast their fate. Let's all go.
I fear not to come late.
And they exit. Act 4, Scene 5. Enter Don Sago, alone with a case of pistols.
Day was my night, and night must be my day. Sunshine to my pleasure with my love, and darkness must lend aid to my revenge. The stage of heaven is hung with solemn black, a time best fitting to act tragedies. The night's great queen, that maiden governess, musters black clouds to hide her from the world, afraid to look on my bold enterprise. Cursed creatures, messengers of death, possess the world. Night ravens, screech owls, and voice-killing mandrakes, the ghosts of misers that imprisoned gold within the harmless bowels of the earth, are night's companions. Bawds to lust and murder, be all propitious to my act of justice upon the scandalizers of her fame, that is the lifeblood of deliciousness, deemed Isabella, Cupid's treasurer, whose soul contains the richest gifts of love. Her beauty from my heart fear doth expel. They relish pleasure best that dread not hell. Who's there?
Enter Count Rogero.
A friend to thee, if thy intents be just and honourable.
Count Rogero, speak. I am the watch.
My name is Rogero. Dost thou know me?
Yes, slanderous villain, nurse of obloquy, whose poisoned breath has speckled clear-faced virtue and made a leper of Isabella's fame, that is as spotless as the eye of heaven. Thy vital threads are cutting. Start not, slave. He's sure of sudden death. Heaven cannot save.
Art not Gniaca turned apostata? Has pleasure once again turned thee again a devil? Art not Gniaca, huh?
Oh, that I were, then I would stab myself, for he is marked for death as well as thee. I am Don Sago, thy mortal enemy, whose hand love makes thy executioner.
I know thee, valiant Spaniard, and to thee murder's more hateful than is sacrilege. Thy actions ever have been honourable.
And this, the crown of all my actions, to purge the earth of such a man-turned monster.
I never wronged thee, Spaniard, did I? Speak! I'll make thee satisfaction like a soldier, a true Italian and a gentleman. Thy rage is treachery without a cause.
My rage is just, and thy heart blood shall know. He that wrongs beauty must be honour's foe. Isabel's quarrel arms the Spaniard's spirit.
Murder should keep with baseness, not with merit. I'll answer thee tomorrow, by my soul, and clear thy doubts, or satisfy thy will.
He's war's best scholar, can with safety kill. Take this tonight. Now meet with me tomorrow.
And shoots. Rogero falls.
I come, Isabella. Thy half thy hate is dead. Valor makes murder light, which fear makes lead.
Enter Captain and a band of soldiers.
The pistol was shot here. Seize him. Bring lights. What? Don Sago, Colonel of the Horse? Ring the alarum bell, raise the whole city. His troops were in the town. I fear treachery. Who's this lies murdered? Speak, bloodthirsty Spaniard.
I have not spoiled his face. You may know his physiognomy.
'Tis Count Rogero. Go, convey him hence. Thy life, proud Spaniard, answers this offence. A strong guard for the prisoner, lest the city's powers rise to rescue him.
They begirt Don Sago with soldiers.
What needs this strife? No slaves, I prize revenge above my life. Fame's registered to future times shall tell that by Don Sago Count Rogero fell.
And they exit end of the act. So two very different contrasty scenes. We have the fair Abigail laughing away at what's going on with their husbands, and Lady Lentulus is somewhat appalled, frankly, at their behaviour, and is an interesting set of contrasts there. And then, of course, we have the conclusion of Rogero, who seems to be wanting to do some sword fighty business, and Sago does a Harrison Ford on him and just shoots him down. Lois.
Yeah, I think Rogero's problem is that he actually wants to talk and to be reasonable. I mean, he's trying to do exactly what he did with the Gniaca in the earlier scene, just explain that this is a really bad idea to kill somebody. But unfortunately, Don Sago doesn't listen. But this is the first actual death we've had. So that makes a big difference to the play.
Yes, blood has been shed. So far, it's been it could have gone all cheerful and comedy, because we've had quite a lot of comedy in the end of the last session. So now blood has been spilt. Rachael.
Has the Spanish tragedy in Geronimo already come out?
Oh yes. This is much later.
Because this is like starting to give me, Spanish tragedy vibes, that we start off kind of like in Geronimo with it being very kind of funny, like it's trying to be a comedy, and then all of a sudden it's kind of unwinds and it's not what we thought. Or like, I guess later with the Duchess of Malfi, you kind of have the same thing where it's very lighthearted and romantic, and then it kind of devolves into a tragedy. So I wonder if we're on that route at the moment.
Well, also just bringing up just the nature of Sago as being this valiant Spaniard, and how he is personified here in this play. And are there awkward problems with that, or is that just imaginary? Briony.
I'm wondering, I mean, I nearly said it earlier when we were talking about how quickly he fell for her, whether that is supposed to be playing on this like hot-blooded, Spanish thing, that, that's why he's kind of fallen for her so quickly. That's why he's so hotly swearing to kill a load of people on her behalf and stuff. Whether it's playing to stereotypes.
Yeah, that this is playing on something slightly different to what we've been encountering elsewhere in the play. Eric.
I do like how you get the sort of distinction between murder and killing someone in battle. It's kind of like, but if he properly challenged Count Rogero, then it would have been a different sort of relationship there, I think, as well. Which I don't know, it's an interesting point to note.
It's also interesting, when they're talking about who is it you've killed, and you point out, I didn't shoot him in the face, which is a particularly grim little line there. So yeah, the play takes quite a turn there. Any additional thoughts on the previous scene with Lady Lentulus? Because I just to linger on some of those points. I was noticing a lot of Sex and the City stuff in the chat. You don't have to elucidate on those thoughts. Leave that running in the background so the viewers of this video are going, "What?" Helen.
Yeah, I'm not a Sex and the City advocate, but I think that Lady Lentulus is in a totally different position to the other two, because the other two, their reputations are not at stake, but hers is. If she wants to save her lover, she has to trade her reputation for his life, and this is a much bigger deal than the other two, who are quite frankly having a giggle over it. Look what a mess our stupid husbands have got into. How long should we leave them before we dig them out?
Yeah, absolutely. Eric.
I was just going to say that it's interesting how we always have Abigail, Freitas, and possibly Lady Lentulus coming right after Isabella meets a new man, / victim / I don't know what he did. It just it's always interesting to see the counterbalance between those two.
Yeah, the structuring is going quite linearly from A to B plot back and forth most of the time. We don't usually have too many scenes of one plot lingering before we nip to the other. So they are neatly enmeshed. I mean, I think we were discussing this before we went on to record, just that question of actually how intersecty these two plot strands are. They feel very connected, but actually they very rarely actually sort of are in the same room. They're about together for the mask, I think. I could be wrong on that point, but they're not thoroughly getting enmeshed, the two plot lines. Alan.
Yeah, there's an interesting question that comes out of that as to whether the two younger ladies are actually supposed to have heard what passed in the scene that immediately preceded them. because there's some implicit comment on what has just happened. So that's an interesting question for how the staging might work.
Do you mean with the A plot, or
Yeah.
Do they? I thought they were talking about the predicaments of their husbands.
Yeah, they were, but there were some indirect. I felt there were some indirect references to what had just passed. Whether that is just me spotting that, or whether it's there deliberately as a moot point.
Well, I mean, the elopement is known, so there might be a logic to that. Rachael, and then we'll move into Act 5.
The B plot with the wives and Lady Lentulus, I think it really serves well to, how to time out the A plot, because we know, like, by the I don't know how long this trial is going, but say if a production decides how long that trial is going for, because Isabella is, she punctuates and comes in between these moments for them, you could kind of tell how long her relationships last. And if there's an emphasis on the exceeding shortness of these matches, or if they are longer than we are perceiving, just because we're meeting up with her as she's breaking up from one person to another. And by the timing of those relationships, I think production putting this on could show some sort of viewpoint on that, like how we talked about the slut shaming, like whether we're judging her from that perspective and judging her from the perspective of her era or from our era.
Any additional thoughts bouncing off that, or any other thoughts anyone wants to throw in before we dive into the other plot strand? Just a little note in the chat. I was quite liking about the unfairness of labelling them an A and a B plot. Maybe I should call them the green and the blue plot. So maybe I should have done it that way. Anyway, sorry, Alan, briefly.
Yeah, just a very quick question with the scenes coming up. Medina, I think, is a new character that we haven't
Indeed,
met before.
yes, I was just checking that.
And I'm just trying to work out who he's supposed to be.
Duke of Medina.
In which case, did we see him before as Duke?
Yeah, we did.
No, different person. It's a different person.
Ah, right.
It's not the same Duke.
Well, we've had two Dukes so far, Robert and the Duke who was sitting in judgment.
This is the Duke of Medina. It's a different person. Worry you not, that is not a confusion.
I think Robert's only a count.
But we have had another Duke, but a Duke of somewhere else. Worry you not. Worry you not.
I've now lost this place in the script through looking for Dukes. Where are we?
Act 5, Scene 1.
Page 54 or thereabouts.
Give me a line.
Don Sago, quakest thou not to behold this spectacle?
Quakest.
You don't speak for a little bit, anyway. So, Act 5, Scene 1. Enter Medina, followed by soldiers with the dead body of Count Rogero on a bier. Don Sago guarded, executioner... there's an executioner, and there's even going to be a scaffold somewhere as well. So this might be going well.
Don Sago, quakest thou not to behold this spectacle? This innocent sacrificed, murdered nobleness, when blood the Maker ever promised, shall though with a slow yet sure vengeance rest. 'Tis a guerdon earned, and it must be paid, as sure revenge as it is sure a deed. I ne'er knew murder yet, but it did bleed. Canst thou, after so many fearful conflicts between this object and thy guilty conscience, now thou art freed from out the serpent's jaws, that vile adulteress, whose sorceries doth draw chaste men into incontinence, whose tongue flows over with harmful eloquence. Canst thou, I say, repent this heinous act, and learn to loathe that killing cockatrice?
By this fresh blood that from thy manly breast I cowardly sluiced out, I would in hell from this sad minute till the day of doom to re-inspire vain Asclepius, and fill these crimson conduits, feel the fire due to the damned in this horrid fact.
Upon my soul, brave Spaniard, I believe thee.
Oh, cease to weep in blood, or teach me too, that bubbling wounds do murmur for revenge. This is the end of lust, where men may see murder as the shadow of adultery, and follows it to death.
But, hopeful Lord, we do commiserate thy bewitched fortunes, a free pardon give on this thy true and noble penitence. Withal we make thee colonel of our horse, levied against the proud Venetian state.
Medina, I thank thee not. Give life to him that sits with Rhesus and the full-cheeked Bacchus, the rich and mighty monarchs of the earth. To me life is 10 times more terrible than death can be to me. Oh, break my breast, divines and dying men may talk of hell, but in my heart the several torments dwell. What Tanais Nilus, or what Tigris swift, what Rhenus ferrier than the cataract? Although Neptulus cold, the waves of all the northern sea should flow forever through these guilty hands, yet the sanguinolent stain would extant be.
God pardon thee, we do.
Enter a messenger, and at the same time there is a shout occurring around about here.
The Countess comes, my lord, unto the death, but so unwillingly and unprepared that she is rather forced, thinking the sum she sent you of £20,000 would have assured her of life.
Oh, heavens! Is she not weary yet of lust and life? Had it been Croesus' wealth, she should have died. Her goods by law are all confiscate to us, and die she shall. Her lust would make a slaughterhouse of Italy, ere she attained to 24 years. 3 earls, 1 viscount, and this valiant Spaniard are known to have been the fuel to her lust, besides her secret lovers, which charitably I judge to have been but few, but some they were. Here is a glass wherein to view her soul, a noble but unfortunate gentleman, cropped by her hand, as some rude passenger doth pluck the tender roses in the bud. Murder and lust, the least of which is death. And hath she yet any false hope of breath?
And before we go to the entrance of Isabella, I think we should unpack some of this material, because I don't know about you, but I'm sort of going, what? At this moment. We've got, straightforward, or what seems to be straightforward. Don Sago, you have committed a murder. And Don Sago says, I'm sorry. Okay, we forgive you. Of which, there's fascinating modern parallels for that of just men forgiving men for things, but which perhaps doesn't quite apply here. But and then Sago saying, no, you shouldn't forgive me. And that line of Medina's, God pardon thee, we do, it just seems weirdly, it landed for me very comic, and I don't think that's necessarily the intention, but it just sort of does. And then we get this news that all of this has unravelled, and Isabella is being very publicly judged by Medina here. And yeah, it just, even though in a sense it's all perfectly logical in terms of the murder would lead to discovery of this, to this and this, it feels suddenly very rushed to me. Thoughts in the room, Rachael, then Lois.
The comedy of that line that you just brought up, I wonder if it's meant to purposely seem that way, not to have a comedic effect, but I don't want to say how it would originally, because I really don't know, but I feel if you played that comically in a modern production, that would elicit from a lot of people in the audience, like maybe a little FU kind of moment, because it's a double standard that they're throwing down the book on they're going to come down on her, but not on him. And then also this, saying the 3 earls, 1 viscount, and this valiant Spaniard, how the rank of the men that she dated went down as we go along the story. If that has some sort of implication of, something, or the way that she's degenerating her rank or her virtue, and that kind of slut shaming sort of commentary on having dated 5 men in all of 24 years of her life.
Yeah, because the Medina needs Sago by the sounds of it, whereas he can rob her of all her stuff and judge her. So there's the double standard between the two is really, really interestingly contrasted. Lois.
Yeah, I'm not surprised if she's unprepared for death, because nobody is prepared for that particular speech. I mean, clearly there must be a missing scene or something. I mean, this just doesn't make sense. I mean, she's had time enough to try to bribe her way out of this situation. She's had time enough to know something about what's happening, but we haven't seen any of that. I mean, the play does do a certain amount of offstage stuff and have people reporting on what's happening, but I mean, something as major as that, it seems absurd.
Helen, then Eric, then Alan.
Who's doing the shouting?
The crowd, presumably, who are there expecting an execution.
Probably all booing her. Disgusting woman, trash, etc.
Shame,
Yeah.
shame,
Yeah.
shame.
Yes, exactly. Eric, then Alan.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out the whole, geography of this, because if you tried to read it geographically, it does not make sense at all. Medina would not have any jurisdiction in Venice or in Italy. But then he says that, you've been leading our guard against, Venice. But then, he mentions that he contradicts himself later on, which is kind of interesting. It's just... some things would need to be tidied up a bit, I think, and maybe it was rushed, as you said.
Well, no, hasn't the A plot moved to a different location so that the B plot's still where it was, so that we're not in the same place? I think it does actually make sense. Lois.
Yeah, I think part of this is that Spain was occupying Italy, wasn't it, or the Holy Roman Empire was, so you'd have Spanish forces there. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Italy was heaving with them.
Yeah.
Most of them on their way to the Netherlands. But yeah, I mean, Spaniards all over the place.
Alan.
Yeah, I mean, when we first met Sago, he was actually obviously leading an incoming armed band or army or some description. And what seems to make sense to me is that Medina is in fact his boss. In other words, the leading party of the insurgents, which means that would make some sense, because the Duke we saw in the previous scene was in fact the native population or the incumbent in power, rather than the insurgents.
Yeah, but we'd say we're in a different place. Remember that the previous Duke is where we left the play at the beginning, and then Isabella elopes, so they're somewhere else. They're not in the same geographical location at this point. So so this is a different Duke and a different location. I'm not quite precisely sure where both camps currently are, because I don't really pay that much attention to geography on that sense. But they are not in the same place. Because, as I say, there's been an elopement earlier in the play, so Isabella left. Right, let us continue the scene, because we have paused mid-scene. Isabella returns, and we have a reasonably detailed, what looks to be a relatively authentic stage direction. Enter Isabella with her hair hanging down, a chaplet of flowers on her head, there's a nosegay in her hand, with her is a cardinal, and the executioner's about as well.
What place is this?
Oh, madame, the castle green.
They should be dancing on a green, I think.
Madame, To you none other than your dance of death.
Good my lord Cardinal, do not thunder thus. I sent today to my physician, and, as he says, he finds no sign of death.
Good madame, do not jest away your soul.
O servant, hast thou betrayed my life? Thou art my dearest lover now, I see. Thou wilt not leave me till my very death. Blessed be thy hand. I sacrifice a kiss to it, and vengeance. Worthily thou didst. He died deservedly, not content to enjoy my youth and beauty, riches and my fortune, but like a chronicler of his own vice. In epigrams and songs he tuned my name, renowned me for a strumpet in the courts of the French king and the great emperor. Didst thou not kill him drunk?
Oh, shameless woman!
Thou shouldst, or in the embraces of his lust it might have been a woman's vengeance. Yet I thank thee, Sago, and would not wish him living were my life instead ransom.
Madame, in your soul have charity.
There's money for the poor.
And gives him some money.
Oh, lady, this is but a branch of charity, an ostentation, or a liberal pride. Let me instruct your soul, for that, I fear, within the painted sepulchre of flesh, lies in a dead consumption. Good madame, read.
And gives a book.
Put me to my book, my lord. Will not that save me?
Yes, madame, in the everlasting world.
Amen, amen. Oh, that's not me.
Amen, amen.
While thou wert my servant, thou hast ever said amen to all my wishes. Witness this spectacle. Where's my lord Medina?
Here, Isabella, what would you?
May we not be deprived?
Mine honour's past, you may not.
No, 'tis mine honour past.
Thine honour's past, indeed.
Then there's no hope of absolute remission?
For that your holy confessor will tell you, be dead to this world, for I swear you die. Were you my father's daughter?
Can you do nothing, my lord Cardinal?
More than the world, sweet lady, help to save. What hand of man wants power to destroy?
You're all for this world, then why not I? Were you in health and youth like me, my lord? Although you merited the crown of life and stood in state of grace assured of it, yet in this fearful separation, old as you are, and till your latest gasp, you'd crave the help of the physician, and wish your days lengthened one summer longer. Though all be grief, labour, and misery, yet none will part with it. That I can see.
Up to the scaffold with her. 'Tis late.
Better later than never, my good lord. You think you use square dealing, Medina's mighty duke, tyrant of France, sent hither by the devil.
And she ascends the scaffold.
The fitter to meet you.
Peace, good my lord. In death do not provoke her.
Servant, low as my destiny I kneel to thee, honouring in death thy manly loyalty, and whatsoe'er become of my poor soul, the joys of both worlds evermore be thine. Commend me to the noble Count Gniaca, that should have shared thy valour and my hatred. Tell him I pray his pardon, and, Medina, art thou yet inspired from heaven? Show thy Creator's image, be like him, Father of mercy.
Headsman, do thy office.
Now God lay all thy sins upon thy head, and sink thee with them to infernal darkness, thou teacher of the Furies' cruelty.
Oh, madame, teach yourself a better prayer. This is your latest hour.
He is mine enemy. His sight torments me. I shall not die in quiet.
I'll be gone. Off with her head there.
And exit Medina.
Takest thou the light to torture misery? Such mercy find thou in the day of doom.
My lord, here is a holy friar desires to have some conference with the prisoners.
Enter this holy friar, though the audience may or may not be aware that it is in fact Roberto in disguise.
It is in private what I have to say, with favor of your fatherhood.
Friar, in God's name, welcome.
Roberto ascends to Isabella.
Lady, it seems your eye is still the same, forgetful of what most it should behold. Do not you know me, then?
Holy sir, so far you are gone from my memory, I must take truce with time ere I can know you.
Bear record, all you blessed saints in heaven, I come not to torment thee in thy death, for of himself he's terrible enough. But call to mind a lady like yourself, and think how ill in such a beauteous soul, upon the instant morrow of her nuptials, apostasy and vile revolt would show. Withal imagine that she had a lord, jealous the heir should ravish her chaste looks, doting like the Creator in his models, who views them every minute, and with care mixed in his fear of their obedience to him. Suppose her sung through famous Italy, more common than the looser songs of Petrarch, to every several zany's instrument. And he, poor wretch, hoping some better fate might call her back from her adulterate purpose, lives in obscure and almost unknown life, till, hearing that she is condemned to die, for he once loved her, lends his pined corpse motion to bring him to her stage of honor, where, drowned in woe at her so dismal chance, he clasps her. Thus he falls into a trance.
Oh, my offended lord, lift up your eyes, but yet avert them from my loathed sight. Had I with you enjoyed the lawful pleasure, to which belongs no fear nor public shame, I might have lived in honour, died in fame. Your pardon on my faltering knees I beg, which shall confirm more peace unto my death than all the grave instructions of the church.
Pardon belongs unto my holy weeds, freely thou hast it. Farewell, my Isabella. Let thy death ransom thy soul. O die a rare example. The kiss thou gavest me in the church, here take. As I leave thee, so thou the world forsake.
Exit Roberto.
Rare accident, ill welcome, noble lord. Madame, your executioner desires you to forgive him.
Yes, and give him too? What must I do, my friend?
Madam, only tie up your hair.
Oh, these golden nets that heaven snared so many wanton youths, not one but has been held a thread of life, and superstitiously depended on. Now to the block we must veil. What else?
Madam, I must entreat you, blind your eyes.
I have lived too long in darkness, my friend, and yet mine eyes, with their majestic light, have got new muses in a poet's sprite. They have been more gazed at, the god of day. Their brightness never could be fluttered. Yet thou command'st a fixed cloud of lawn to eclipse eternally these minutes of light. What else?
Now, madam, all's done, and when you please, I'll execute my office.
We will be for thee straight. Give me your blessing, my lord Cardinal. Lord, I am well prepared. Murder and lust down with my ashes sink, but like ingrateful seed perish in earth, that you may never spring against my soul, like weeds to choke it in the heavenly harvest. I fall to rise, mount to thy Maker's spirit. Leave here thy body. Death has her demerit.
And she is executed.
A host of angels be thy convey hence.
Re-enter Medina.
The funeral with her body and this lord's. None here, I hope, can tax us of injustice. She died deservedly, and may like fate attend all women so insatiate.
And they exit. This is a scene that goes in interesting directions. Because there's a real sense of Isabella, and especially with Medina obviously being such a nice person, in opposition. And then we have this scene of Roberto, and I'm not quite sure how to pass what happens there, and then what happens after there, and how the overall flow of that works. Thoughts on the room? I'm not quite sure how to take all of that, because it feels like it goes in two different directions. And the death doesn't quite land for me. Lois.
Yeah, it's a very strange scene. I think the writing is a lot better suddenly, though. And that whole bit where she's told it's the castle green and says there should be dancing on a green. I mean, it's such a weird thing to say. I mean, a lot of what she says through there about, well, you all want to live, why shouldn't I? I mean, it's about the only time I felt some sort of sympathy for her, actually. The scene with Roberto, I don't know. I mean, it's, this theme of wronged husbands nobly forgiving their wives, we've had quite a bit of, and everybody usually gets fed up with it. But it seems to be the only thing that works with her. I mean, to give her some sense of what she's done wrong, or why she should be perhaps sorry that it's not just that she's ruined a lot of people's lives, but she has actually instigated murder.
Yes, I mean, she hasn't done a nice thing there, but Sago, there's no particular indication that Sago's left as well. I just like to mention that this guy who has got a pardon and who did the murder is still there watching. Lynn.
Yeah, that little exchange with Roberto and Isabella is really interesting. I think just in isolation, can be very moving. And I think it's interesting that the way he brings her to self-knowledge is talking about her in the third person. Imagine a woman like yourself. I'm not accusing you, but imagine, make that leap of imagination and try to think what it's like for someone to do this to her husband who adores her, and then that ruins his life. So that's, I think, smart to get her to look at the situation not from the inside but from the outside, and that's kind of what brings her around. But yeah, it's still very the whole thing is very weird.
Yeah, I mean, in the sense that you've got this moving the direction of a conventional death scene on a scaffold, where they might be reconciled on some level at the final moments, but it's sort of it's not quite how I want her to go. That's just me, I suppose. Briony, then Rachael.
I guess this is the moment where he's gonna get me very soon, because it's not fair and it's not right, and why is it all her fault? It takes two to tango. I'm very annoyed. He better sort this out and make bad things happen to the men too.
But is the play supposed to make you really annoyed, or is that where we go with the production? Because the double standards in this scene, and especially with Medina just going, okay, I'll leave the room so long as you kill her. And then the moment she's dead, he just pops back in again. Right, okay, that's good. Shall we collect the money? I don't think he quite says that, but that's sort of, I think, in his mind. Rachael, then Lynn.
I think that there is something here that everybody in this scene besides her is a man. Because it's not like she's the only woman in this play. And that I was posting in the chat something about the witch trials in America, because and Helen said that it's like a felony forfeiture, that if those people, when they said that they admitted that they were a witch to avoid any more torture, that all their possessions were taken. And is it Medina or the Duke or somebody that says that they've already had 20,000 pounds of her, but they'll have like all of her estate? Like, all of these men seem to have something to gain from her, like the Sago's gotten something. The men that she's dated in the past have got something. And, you know, I mean, now they're taking her money and her properties or something. And even her husband wants something for her. And it's all about what they want and the consequences that they feel that they have to live with. But in the end, none of them have to face a real consequence, which is death. You know what I mean? Like Sago committed murder and he gets away with it, but she doesn't. And she had a lesser hand in the plot.
Lynn.
Oh, I don't know. Isn't we'll see what happens to Sago. I wonder if this scene is actually kind of designed to underscore the double standard. I'm probably making too much of it, but I was really struck by the moment when the Cardinal hands her a book and she says, "Oh, you put me to my book. Is this going to save me?" And that's got to be, I think, a reference to the fact that in England, anyway, a man could plead benefit of clergy and get a commuted sentence. And of course, she can't. And of course, it was sort of notorious that men would often even just pretend to be able to read in order to win a non-capital sentence for a capital crime. You know, they just had to memorize a certain passage of the Bible and pretend to read it. So, but because she's a woman, she couldn't possibly be a member of the clergy, so she doesn't have that out. I mean, I might be making too much of it, but I feel like that's what's going on there.
Yeah, I mean, just go to Helen here.
Yeah, I think you are absolutely, totally right, and I'm kicking myself that I didn't spot it, because I was thinking, are you sending me back to school, putting me to my book? But no, you're absolutely right. It's all about the neck verse and the fact that women didn't have the ability to read themselves out of trouble.
And I mean, the other thing is, you know, to a degree, it doesn't matter to us whether that was the original intention. It's whether we could produce it that way, and that gives us an angle which to go in with this scene. Eric, briefly, because otherwise we need to complete the play. There is more to come.
I just kind of want to say that I actually was more impressed with her when she was resisting, sort of, you know, being defiant up to that point, and then sort of just, you know, when she is like, "Oh, I sort of repent for all my sins." It's kind of okay, good for you, but I mean, it's not, you know, she's about to die, which I guess makes sense in this context. But it just like, yeah, it just feels more interesting when she's sort of flips off patriarchy, basically.
And you know, there's this mention of eyes as well with the executioner, which you know, we've been talking about. You know, she looks at someone and she falls in love, and you know, there's this moment of you know, refusing the blindfold kind of discussion. There's a lot more that can be unpacked out of that, I'm sure, but we need to go on and do the final scene and conclude what happens to the B plot, which we've only sort of vaguely touched on this session. With Abigail and Theus, but their husbands, in theory, are awaiting their doom, as is indeed Mendoza. So let's find out. We're over to a different Duke Amago, and there's a watch, and there's some senators.
I'm amazed at this maze of wonder, wherein no thread or clue presents itself to wind us from the obscure passages. What says my nephew?
You're resolute, my lord, and dost confess the theft.
We'll use him like a felon, cut him off for fear he do pollute our sounder parts. Yet why should he steal that is of loaden wine? Riches to him were adding sands unto the Libyan shore, or far less charity. What say the other prisoners?
Like men, my lord, fit for the other world, they taked upon their death, they slew your nephew.
And he is yet alive. Keep them asunder. We may scent out the while.
And enter here Claradiana and Mizaldus, and they are bound, and there's a friar, and there's some officers.
My friend, is it the rigour of the law I should be tied thus hard? I'll undergo it. If not, prithee then slacken. Yet I have deserved it. This murder lies heavy on my conscience.
Wedlock? Aye, here's my wedlock. Oh, haw, haw, haw.
Oh, sir, be qualified.
Sir, I am to die a dog's death, and will snarl a little at the old signor. You are only a parenthesis, which I will leave out of my execrations. But first to our quondam wives, that makes us cry our vowels in red capital letters. I and you are cuckolds. Oh, may bastard bearing with the pangs of childbirth be doubled to 'em. May they ever have twins, and be 3 weeks in travail between. May they be so rivelled with painting that by the time they are 30, it may be held a word of condign merit but to look upon 'em. May they live to ride in triumph in a dung cart, and be browned with all the odious ceremonies belonging to it. May the cucking school be their recreation, and the dungeon their dying chamber. May they have 9 lives like a cat to endure this and more. Maybe they be burnt for witches of a sudden. And lastly, may the opinion of philosophers prove true, that women have no souls.
Enter on that cue, Theus and Abigail.
But, husband, at your prayers so seriously?
Yes, a few orisons. Friar, thou that standest between the soul of men and the devil, keep these female spirits away, or I'll renounce my faith else.
Oh, husband, I little thought to see you in this taking.
Oh, whore, I little thought to see you in this taking. I am governor of this castle of cornets. My grave will be stumbled at, thou adulterate whore. I might have lived like a merchant.
So you may still, husband.
Peace! Thou art very quick with
Aye,
me.
by my faith, and so I am, husband. Belike, you know, I am with child.
Bastard, a bastard, a bastard! I might have lived like a gentleman, and now I must die like a hanger-on, show tricks upon a wooden horse, and run through an alphabet of scurvy faces. Do not expect a good look from me.
Oh, me unfortunate.
Oh, to think, whilst we are singing the last hymn and ready to be turned off, some new tune is inventing by some meter-monger to a scurvy ballad of our death. Again at our funeral sermons to have the divine divide his text into fair branches. Oh, flesh and blood cannot endure it. Yet I will take it patiently like a grave man. Hangman, tie not my halter of a true lover's knot. I burst it if thou dost.
Husband, I do beseech you, on my knees, I may but speak with you. I'll win your pardon, or with tears like Niobe bedew her.
Hold thy water, crocodile, and say I am bound to do thee no harm were I free, yet I could not be looser than thou, for thou art a whore. Agamemnon's daughter that was sacrificed for a good wind felt but a blast of the torments thou shouldst endure. I'll make thee swound oftener than that fellow that by his continual practice hopes to become a drum major. What sayest thou to tickling to death with bodkins? But thou hast laughed too much at me already, whore. Justice, O Duke, let me not hang in suspense.
Husband, I'll nail me to the earth, but I'll win your pardon. My jewels, jointure, all I have shall fly. Apparel, bedding, I'll not leave a ring. so you may come off fairly.
I'll come off fairly. Thou beg my pardon. I'd rather the surgeon's hall should beg my dead body for an anatomy than thou beg my life. Justice, O Duke, and let us die.
Signor, think, and dally not with heaven, but freely tell us, did you do the murder?
I have confessed it to my ghostly father, and done the sacrament of penance for it. What would your highness more?
The like have I. What would your highness more? And here before you all take on my death.
In God's name, then, on to the death with them, for the poor widows that you leave behind, though by the law their goods are all confiscate, yet will be their good lord, and give them.
Oh, hell of hells. Why did we not hire some villain to fire our houses?
I thought not of that. My mind was altogether of the gallows.
May the wealth I leave behind me help to damn her. And as the cursed fate of courtesan, what she gleans with her traded art may one, as most due plague, cheat from her in the last dotage of her tired lust, and leave her an unpitied age of woe.
Amen, amen.
I never heard men pray more fervently.
Oh, that a man had the instinct of a lion. He knows when the lioness plays false to him. But these solaces, these women, they bring men to grey hairs before he be 30. Yet they cast out such mists of flattery from their breath that a man's lost again. Sure, I fell into my marriage bed drunk like the leopard. Well, with sober eyes would I had avoided it. Come, grave, and hide me from my blasted fame. Oh, that thou couldst as well conceal my shame.
And exit the two chaps with officers. The women kneel to the Duke.
Your pardon and your favour, gracious Duke. At once we do implore that have so long deceived your royal expectation, assured that the comic knitting up will move your spleen unto the proper use of mirth, your natural inclination, and wipe away the watery coloured anger from your enforced cheek. Fair lord, beguile them and your saft with a pleasing smile.
Now by my life I do. Fair ladies, rise. I ne'er did purpose any other end to them in these designs. I was informed of some notorious error as I sat in judgment, and, do you hear, these night works require a cat's eyes to pierce dejected darkness. Call back the prisoners.
Re-enter Claradiana and Mizaldus with the officers.
Now, what other troubled news that we must back thus? Has any senator begged my pardon upon my wife's prostitution to him?
Despite this, I'd kept in my breath of purpose, thinking to go away the quieter. And must we now back?
Since you are to die, we'll give you winding sheets, wherein you shall be shrouded alive, by which we wind out all these miseries. Signor Mizaldus, bestow a while your eye, and read here of your true wife's chastity.
And gives him a letter.
Chastity? I will sooner expect a Jesuit recantation, or the Great Turk's conversion, than her chastity. Pardon, my liege, I will not trust mine eyes. Women and devils will deceive the wise.
The like, sir, is apparent on your side.
Who? My wife? Chaste? Has your grace your sense? I'll sooner believe a conjurer may say his prayers with zeal than her honesty. Had she been an hermaphrodite, I would scarce have given credit to you. Let him that have drunk love drugs trust a woman. By heaven, I think the air is not more common.
Then we impose a strict command upon you. On your allegiance, read what there is writ.
A writ of error on my life, my liege.
You'll find it so, I fear.
What have we here? The art of brachygraphy?
He's stung already, as if his eyes were turned on Perseus' shield, their motions fixed like to the pool of Styx.
Yonder's our flames, and from the hollow arches of his quick eyes comes comet trains of fire, bursting like hidden furies from their caves.
Yours, till he sleep the sleep of all the world, Mizaldus?
Harry, and that lethargy sees you. Read again.
Thy servant, so made by his stars, Mizaldus. A fire on your wandering stars, Mizaldus.
Satan, why hast thou so tempted my wife?
Peace, seducer, I am branded in the forehead with your star mark. May the stars drop upon thee, and with their sulphurous vapours choke thee, ere thou come to the gallows.
Stretch not my patience, Mahomet.
Termagant, that will stretch thy patience.
Had I known this, I would have poisoned thee in the chalice this morning when we received the sacrament.
Slave, know'st thou this? 'Tis an appendix to the letter, but the great temptation is hidden within. I will scour thy gorge like a hawk. Thou shalt swallow thine own stone in this letter, sealed and delivered in the presence of...
And they fight.
Keep them asunder, list to us, we command.
O violent villain, is not thy hand here too, and writ in blood to show thy raging lust?
Spice of a new halter, when you go arranging thus like devils, would you might burn for tit, as they do?
Thus to lie with another man's wife, he shall be short hereon again. But we are friends, sweet duck. And shall be... Sorry.
No, goes to kiss Thais.
And this shall be my maxim all my life. Man is never happy, is till in a wife.
Here sink our hate lower than any whirlpool, and this chaste kiss I give thee for thy care.
Kisses Abigail.
Thou fame of woman, full as wise as fair.
You have saved us a labour in your love. But, gentlemen, why stood you so preposterously? Would you have headlong run to infamy in so defamed a death?
My liege, I'd rather roar to death with Pharalaris bull than Darius-like to have one of my wings extend to Atlas, t'other to Europe. What is a cuckold? Learn of me. Few can tell his pedigree, nor his subtle nature constir, born a man but dies a monster. Yet great antiquities say they sprung from out Methuselah, who after Noah's flood was found to have his crest with branches crowned. God in Eden's happy shade this same wondrous creature made, then to cut off all mistaking, cuckolds are of woman's making, from whose snares good Lord deliver us.
Amen, amen. Before I would prove a cuckold, I would endure a winter's pilgrimage in the frozen zone, go stark naked through Muscovia, where the climate is 9 degrees colder than ice, and that's much to all married men. Now I see great reason why love should marry jealousy, since man's best of life is fame, he hath need to preserve the same. When 'tis in a woman's keeping, let not Argus' eyes be sleeping. The box unto Pandora given by the better powers of heaven, that contains pure chastity, and each virgin sovereignty, wantonly she oped and lost, gift whereof a god might boast. Therefore shouldst thou Diana wed, yet be jealous of her bed.
Night, like a mosque, is entered heaven's great hall, with 1,000 torches ushering the way. Teresa's will we can consecrate this evening, like my Cyrenius choosing the oracle. We'll make this night the day. Fair joys befall us and our actions. Are you pleased all?
Let's ask the room. Are we pleased all?
No.
Before I go to round the room on that point, I just want to ask a question. Is Mendoza dead?
No.
But did I miss that? What happened to Mendoza?
The play just doesn't get properly ended. I mean, clearly the scene that's going to happen, it should have happened, is that he's brought in to be executed. Lady Lentulus says, I'm afraid that I shall have to ruin my reputation, but the fact is he was climbing a ladder of ropes, which I had said he could climb, and he fell, and it's all my fault. And he will say, well, marry me, and then there's no problem. And she will say, okay, well, I will, since I'm forced into it. Clinch, happy ending. I don't know why on earth they haven't done this.
Yeah, it's the last thing we heard. The poor bugger's gone off and died. And yes, she sort of wrestled with it, but she didn't. And those perhaps that's where it should happen. We just don't have this scene. Rachael.
They mention it. They mention it at the top of this last scene, but they refer to him as nephew, because he's the Duke's nephew.
Yeah.
And he's confessed to the. Still says he's a theft. I think the Duke is cutting him off from his, whatever he gets. His
horrified. I mean, obviously, but he's also saying, what on earth was he trying to rob her for? He's got loads of money anyway. I mean, the whole thing is absurd. Why on earth Mendoza thought that would be a good excuse for being there? He's an incredibly rich nobleman, and he says he's broken into this woman's house to rob her. And the Duke finds that hard to believe. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting that he'd be prepared to put his own nephew to death for robbery, whereas they've just let Don Sago off, who's actually shot someone.
Anyway, that's the bit that we don't really get resolved. It's vaguely mentioned in passing. I still haven't found the bit, but we'll sort that out later. But it's so clearly not enough there that disappears. So let's get to the other thing. Claradiana and Mizaldus being such lovely people, and the way the play ends on that. I think I'll go to Briony first.
I'm just really mad right now. So he got me again because I didn't get really angry when it was getting more and more misogynistic at the end, because I knew he was going to find some way to sort it out. But he didn't. What? Is there something missing? What? It doesn't. Things aren't tied up, and he hasn't made the worst people suffer, and I feel very unsatisfied.
Okay, I think it's time to let I've been very circumspect about this. I've been saying the author for a while, even that's not 100% accurate, about this particular text, because I said at the very beginning, the text of the play says it's by John Marston. Well, a bit of it possibly is, like Act 1. And maybe a bit of Act 2. And then the rest of it seems to have been completed by William Barksted and Lewis Machin. And they have, by and large, it looks like they've split the, shall we say, the sad bits and the comic bits between them. And the reason I didn't mention that in advance was just to see how people felt about the flow of the text without knowing. And actually, until about here, there was some people were sort of going, oh, it doesn't quite feel like it holds together, and some people were defending that it did. And then the question here is, the ending feels like it's a total fudge, doesn't it? It's just but it's that was the test really, that I wanted to see whether the room, just reading the text without looking at possible ways that text was constructed, how they took the overall shape of it. It's still an interesting question about the overall flow of how it all fits together or doesn't fit together. But yeah, we don't really get perhaps the ending that we don't know what Marston might have been intending. And what Marston might have done with it. Partly depends on, of course, when Marston was writing his bit, which there isn't absolute agreement. If it's late in his career or earlier. But either way, he would still probably have come up with something slightly more satisfying than this. So, I'll go to Lynn, and then Helen.
I want to go back to cuckolded husbands, because I'm sorry, I don't understand how the letters clear things up. The letters are the seducing letters, but they're right. Mizaldus is reading Claradiana's letter to his wife and vice versa. So, okay, it's not really the wife's fault. They didn't initiate the assignation. But how does that get the wives off the hook? It's never really made clear that the wives switched places. That's never really...
Is there's the business with the ring as an appendix, so maybe that fills in that gap. I'm clutching at straws. I don't think it does, but yeah.
Okay, so that's not just me that feels like that's not really cleared up for the men. That how do the wives prove that they switched houses, so that the adultery never took place?
I'll go to Helen, then I'll go to Lois.
Yeah, I think this is two plays. You've got the comedy play, and you've got the Isabella play. And I keep on thinking of ways of bringing them together. If you make the Duke, both Dukes, one Duke, and if the Friar in the last scene is the same as the Friar in the scene before,
Okay.
who is also Robert in his spare time, or used to be Roberto. But I don't, honestly, the tone is so different, and the purpose is so different, and the result is so different. How you can go to comedy after the execution of Isabella, I do not know. And an on-stage execution at that.
It seems like what they're striving for is, these deliberate compare and contrast scenes. We go from one kind of execution to this other one, and a way of perhaps relieving some sort of tension at the end of the thing. But it's just the fact you have these two men doing these speeches, and delivering this invective, and then somehow it's all going to be all put back in its box at the end, and you just go, yeah, no. Lois?
Yeah, that is really shambolic. There's got to be a point at which the women whisper to their husbands or something. But surely that bit where Abigail was saying, "I'll sell everything I have, just save my husband." That's clearly there to, hoodwink him, or, she's enjoying the drama of the thing, and Thais is enjoying the drama. But then somewhere in there's clearly got to be a turning point. It can't just be that each guy realizes that the other one was courting his wife, because I guess otherwise, I guess they've been thinking hitherto that the women were just cuckolding them with somebody else. But now they realize they're being cuckolded with each other. But there's got to be a moment where somebody explains the situation to them, and it never seems to happen.
Sometimes I complain about plays that overly explain stuff the audience already knows at the end. Whereas this seems to be the reverse of, we already know all of this, but actually it would be quite nice if the cast on stage are actually given some explication. Rachael, were you waving? I see Eric now.
Was this edited? Was this censored, or was it incomplete? Why is this the way it was? Why did these guys jump in and do this? Or is it like with Webster, that I forget which one it was, where Webster had adapted a play for another theater after it came from a children's company? Is this something like that, or textual damage?
Well, broadly speaking, nobody knows is the answer. The suspicion is that it started by Marston and then completed by others. Not necessarily that they were collaborating together from the off. And the reason why that suspicion is in place is because the names radically change, and that's what went wrong at the beginning of the week. Whereas I was trying to tidy it up and make a decision as to who had what name. And you can go one way or you can go the other, basically. But the manuscript does not agree. It's not manuscript. The printing does not agree in that sense. So it gets printed much later than they assume it was produced. And yeah, there's a lot of inference going on here, of which we don't actually have definite answers to. Lois, did you want to leap in on that one?
Yeah, I imagine one reason people think that Marston wrote the first act or so and then dropped out is that seems to be what happened with Eastward Ho, which is another play that he wrote that was written with 2 other people. And for the most part, his bit of it seems to be sort of the first act and the opening of the second act, although there may be other bits of him throughout the play. I mean, it was a bit more like a collaboration, but he may have had this habit of starting plays and then handing them over to somebody else, or, getting something else to do. I mean, he was much better off than most of the other playwrights. I think after his father's death, he was probably independently wealthy and didn't really need to write, and then he went into the church. So
yes, it could be that he just dropped the play in disgust at the theatre and went off to be a clergyman. That is another option, though I wouldn't go too far on that one. Lynn, then Eric, then Helen.
I thought that this was actually one of the few things we have in manuscript. Isn't that true that we actually have a handwritten copy that we're working?
Maybe I misread something. That could be possible. I'm just going on the.
Let's not make a dismiss it. But what I was also thinking, subject change, is another one of the things that I would claim is sort of unsatisfying or annoying about this text is kind of what it says about status, about class. That the ordinary people are the comic plot, and the tragedy is the aristocrats. That Thaisa says in the her previous scene, if all cuckolds hung themselves, the merchant ventures would be a very small company. So the implication is that bourgeois wives fool around all the time. It doesn't really matter. It's like the stakes are lower because they're lower status. So it's funny when merchants and bourgeois gentlemen or bourgeois men think their wives are cheating on them, but when noblemen's wives are cheating on them, that's tragic. That's a thing.
Yeah, so it's printed 1613. It starts off with John Marston solely as the author, and then very quickly it's reissued, and his name has been cancelled, and the other 2 authors have been put in place. So yeah, there's some interesting things going on with its print history, but it doesn't mean the text is still very tidy. Sorry, Helen, I think, then Eric.
It was Eric. Then...
It was Eric, then Helen, and lots of other hands.
Yeah, I was gonna say. Well, I think Helen just put it in the chat, but if the sort of counter Lynn's point, which is relevant to the point that I was gonna make, but anyway, if you sort of have the what do you call it, noble, it would be a tragedy, so to speak, socially, because obviously they'd have the whole nobility thing. It would be a smaller class for them. How would they keep control of the other classes and so on and so forth? They were already a small class. I assume, I don't know. But then, I mean, nowadays it doesn't really matter to us, does it? Except to historians like Helen, who are very important to us, and we love them. My other point was that the sort of hanging bit makes me think of sort of because she got married and was indecent enough to have several lovers, made me think of Tancred Engismunda, which has come up a few times in the chat because of the Cupid stuff. But it just made me think that there are a lot of cautionary tales for women who are widowed and get remarried for some reason. I don't know why, but yeah.
Sorry, say again, Lynn. Oh no, you've muted yourself.
Yeah, Duchess of Malfi definitely seems to be that in that morality genre.
A few years' time, yes. There's and other examples are available. Helen, then Briony, then Alan.
There seemed to be a working theory about women's lust, which was that they're very, very pure and think nothing of it before marriage or before their first sexual encounter. And then they get a taste for it, which is why widows are so dangerous. Because they are always chasing after men, because once they've actually had a man in their bed and they realize what utterly wonderful creatures men are, they never cease to desire them. But what I was actually going to say was, I was thinking about Edward IV, which is Marston, yeah?
No, Hayward.
Hayward, oh, right. Forget what I was going to say. We read so many plays. It really does my head in. Okay. I was thinking Jane Shaw. That was all.
Yeah.
But different playwright.
But very, very, within the sort of landing point of this. I'll briefly go to Lois before I go to Briony.
Yeah, one thing that one could compare it with, I mean, in The Malcontent, Aurelia, who has definitely committed adultery, is nevertheless, as far as one can make out in the play, forgiven and taken back by Piero, which is actually quite unusual. I mean, my feeling is that Marston is a relatively compassionate writer, in fact, and it comes up particularly in The Dutch Courtesan, where he's getting a lot of stuff from Montaigne, but things that, he seems to think that strict sexual morality is a bit ridiculous. On the other hand, I don't think anybody would condone the behavior of the Countess here. I mean, this isn't just somebody, I mean, the Duchess of Malfi, I think, is depicted extremely sympathetically. In fact, even though, it's set against a background of horror about women, widows not dying on their husbands' graves immediately. But this woman is just either idiotic or a maniac.
Well, I think it speaks to Helen's point about that there is this idea of a progression that you getting a taste for enjoying yourself leads to all these things, and the play actually plays that progression. So there's that sort of logic behind it, perhaps.
Yeah, actually, I mean, Middleton is really good on that. I think it's in The Changeling that De Flores says if a woman part once from him, she makes her husband. She spreads and mounts then like arithmetic, 1, 10, 100, 1,000, something like that. I mean, once you start, that's it.
Yes, other misogyny is available. Briony.
Yeah, I suppose people have probably avoided it because it's the really obvious thing, but I'm so stuck on the level of misogyny with this ending, because these two women, all they've done is be married, and their husbands have done this awful thing, and they've managed to scheme to find a way to not let their husbands do this awful thing but think they're doing it, and they still get called all sorts of horrible names, and they don't get any justice in the end. And that is the thing that really annoys me the most about this ending. Marston normally finds a way, even if it's just that everyone's awful so they all get an unhappy ending, fair enough. But it's just so unfair, and it really annoys me.
Yeah, but because Helen was talking about, we have this problem of tone, that we have this comedy and we have this tragedy. But you could argue this is a tragic ending because it's this forced jollity that we're being put in, and this actually really awful scene actually. On that question of what we might do with this today, the unfairness of this situation. I mean, whether we want to exercise unfairness for mass audiences is another question. But it might be that there is scope that this could work in a quite depressing way, but could actually speak to the balances of power that still exist now. Alan, then Eric, and I think Rachael, possibly.
Yeah, I mean, my thought was we had throughout the anti-Semitic trope, which seemed to be operating between Mizaldus and Claradiana for no really apparent reason. And then suddenly in this final sequence, we got reference to Muhammad, which seemed to come out of absolutely nowhere.
Yeah,
so
they
God knows what they were playing at.
Yeah, it seems like they're just stepping to a different. Let's make sure we insult everybody.
Yeah.
And
Equal
there's something odd
opportunity
going on with
insults.
their insult match that's very strange. Eric.
I was gonna say, I think the Claradiana and Mizaldus were probably hanging out with the Marquess from the Patient Grizzle, where we just wanted to hang and kill him by the end of that play. So it was like, we just really wanted them to be hanged. I think as a modern audience, at least.
Yeah, we just want Theus and Abigail to just kick the stools from under them, really, and then play ends, and not subtle. But then we see Mendoza and Lady Lentulus getting married and living happily ever after, or not. I'm not sure. We're running very low on time, so we're not going to. We've sort of been doing final thoughts, but I think Rachael wanted to say something. I would just like to briefly go to Valentina if you've got any final things you want to throw in before we run out of time. Anything? Anything?
No, go to Valentina.
Valentina's is. I think Valentina's done. She's died twice.
Yes, exactly. I just this play is not for me.
Yes, I'm endeavouring to play devil's advocate. It's really hard work. Sometimes it's fun playing devil's advocate. Sometimes it's really not. Any other final thoughts anyone wants to throw in?
If I can just jump in, what I would say is that sometimes it's fun to play bad characters, but I don't find that even from a performer point of view, most of these characters have enough on them to be actually interesting to play. Probably Abigail and Thais would be interesting to play, but if they had a little bit more. But apart from that, it's
There's something very surface about everything. I was talking about games earlier, that it feels like these are, and here's the scene, just sort of play it, and that'll do, and that there isn't enough depth going on here to save whatever it's trying to do, even if it should be. Lois.
Yeah, there's just so much that seems to be missing. I mean, any competent playwright surely would feel, well, certainly the need to wind up the Mendoza Lady Lentulus plot, but also to have a moment, and it wouldn't take very much. I mean, just for the Duke to say, you two stupid men, don't you realize that your marvelous wives have saved you from infamy and from your own evil intentions, and you ought to be grateful to them, or something like that. And then the men should look abashed. And I mean, because as it is, it's terribly unsatisfactory, but it's hard to imagine any even halfway competent playwright who wouldn't see that some of these things need to be done. And also, I think that there needs to be some kind of preparation for Isabella's entry to be executed.
Something about just Act 5, deadlines here, folks. Just get some pages in, will you? Will this do? No. And ending with these sort of semi, these little rhymey bits at the end that just feels like it's from a completely different era. Weird. Any other thoughts before I close this session? Because I really want to close this session.
Yeah, actually, those rhyming bits you mentioned, it just occurred to me that maybe Barksted and Machin were paying a funny tribute to Marston. I mean, there is so much in there about people writing satiric verse. I mean, not only Claradiana, but then Rogero has done it. And then you get these rhyming things at the end. Maybe because they were finishing up a Marston play, they decided to stick in this kind of stuff.
Eric, very briefly.
It does have that element of like with Common Conditions, where it just stopped. They went we don't have any more time for this now, because the Queen is going to execute us or something if we overrun, or whoever it was at the time. And it just felt very sort of forced, because you do get the Duke going, "Oh yes, and it's a mask. Did we please you, fair audience?" and stuff. And it's like, no.
Yeah, desperate rearguard action there from effectively the epilogue. Okay. On that note, we'll return to this at some point.
No, we won't.
Are you threatening us?
Yeah, that's but considering that our working list is about 850 plays, when we come back to this, might be a while. On that note, goodbye.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone. I have no closing line.